Chapter 21 Return to the 18th floor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Brother Mingyang, do you want a knife and fork? Suyu looked at the pile of tableware in the cabinet and turned to ask Wang Mingyang. No, just wash your hands and just hold them while you're done. You can't use a knife or fork, it's not as convenient as chopsticks. Wang Mingyang waved his hand. As a Jiaoxi worker, he had never enjoyed anything like Western-style steak. There is no chance to learn from others to eat with a knife and fork. He walked to the sink nearby and washed his hands, and then together with Suyu, he brought several plates of tomahawk steak, 2 large pots of king crab, 2 large pots of Australian dragon, and a pot of vegetable salad to the private room. The two of them sat down and started eating. Before cooking, Wang Mingyang told Suyu to cook more. Fortunately, the preparation of these things is relatively simple. Suyu did not spend much time on his own to make so much food. The sound of chewing by the two of them could not be heard for a while, and Suyu's whole little face was greasy. After awakening her powers, she was already a junior evolver. Her body had been strengthened, which consumed a lot of physical energy and needed to be replenished through food. Therefore, evolved people will eat more. Wang Mingyang has strengthened it twice. While gaining great strength, the consumption of the body will also increase, and the food intake will definitely be much larger. Boom! Boom! In the middle of the meal, there were suddenly several knocks on the door. Suyu's cherry mouth was still biting the delicious tender meat of oolong. Hearing the sound, his eyes turned cold and he grabbed the horizontal knife beside him. Wang Mingyang patted her little hand calmly, indicating that she didn't need to be nervous. Then he narrowed his eyes slightly, still chewing the steak in his mouth, and said vaguely, "Please come in." The door to the private room slowly opened to both sides, and Ningxue walked in, with Zhao Ding following closely behind her. "Sorry for disturbing your meal." Ningxue bowed slightly and said a little embarrassed. "It doesn't matter. You've already disturbed me anyway. Tell me, what's the matter?" Wang Mingyang said calmly. Although she is the future ice and snow goddess, that is the future. For her now, it is not a problem for Wang Mingyang to hit 10 with one hand. When Ningxue heard this, her teeth felt a little itchy. This man had only met her twice and he had already criticized her several times. Am I not beautiful? Am I not attractive enough? Why is this man so tough? You have to attack me every time, he must not lift it. Otherwise, how could you ignore me like this? Ningxue felt resentful in her heart. In the past, she felt that those men were hovering around her like flies. Now that the man in front of her ignored her so much and attacked her in every way, Ningxue went a little crazy. She took a deep breath, suppressed the unknown anger in her heart, and continued to smile and said, "I would like to ask if you will stay here tonight." Suyu took a bite of the Australian dragon meat and glanced at Wang Mingyang. After getting his signal, he responded, "We will stay on the 18th floor tonight. We have already cleaned up the zombies on that floor in the afternoon." Ningxue's eyes lit up, and she immediately sat down across the round table between the two of them, and continued, "Then can I go back to the 18th floor with you? I lived there before." "Okay, after dinner, we will go back to the 18th floor." Wang Mingyang dropped the bones of the tomahawk steak, wiped the oil stains on his hands on the tablecloth, and said calmly, "Thank you very much." Ningxue showed a hint of surprise, then stood up and said, "Then I won't disturb you for now. I will wait for my 2 companions in the corridor." "Please." Wang Mingyang raised his hand, with no intention of keeping guests. Ningxue glanced at the steak and king crab on the table, bit her lip and turned around to leave. "Brother Mingyang, why don't you keep her for dinner? She is such a beautiful woman." Suyu asked Wang Mingyang after Ningxue and Zhao Ding went out. "I'm not familiar with her, so why should I keep her to eat? Let alone the two of them, how can I eat if they stay here?" Wang Mingyang gave her a slap in the face and snorted coldly. Suyu chuckled and continued to nibble on a king crab. Wang Mingyang's eyes narrowed slightly and he didn't know what he was thinking. The two of them quickly finished a large table of food. There was actually a bathroom in the private room. Suyu ran to clean his greasy hands, came back and sat down on the chair, patting his belly with satisfaction. "Brother Mingyang, shall we go back upstairs now? Take a rest and then we'll go back and practice your abilities tonight." Su nodded silently, knowing very well that if he wanted to go back to find his mother, he would have to be stronger. "Let's go back to the 18th floor first." After a while, Wang Mingyang stood up first, grabbed a Moing and walked out, pushing open the wooden door of the private room. Ningxue's seductive figure appeared in front of him. Wang Mingyang didn't say anything and walked straight to the elevator. Su nodded towards this ridiculously beautiful woman and followed Wang Mingyang with a horizontal knife. Zhao Ding took a step forward and asked Ningxue with his eyes if he wanted to follow. Ningxue nodded and followed without hesitation. Zhao Ding's blazing eyes rested on Ningxue's buttocks for a second, and he followed quickly. The four of them walked straight through the restaurant hall and towards the elevator without saying a word. Wang Mingyang and Su Yu were besieged when they arrived. The corpses all the way from the elevator to the lobby were their work. It wouldn't be strange to turn around and pass by them now, but Ningxue and Zhao Ding, who were following closely behind, saw corpses scattered everywhere in front of them, broken limbs and broken arms scattered all over the ground, and blood flowing like a river in the hall. Such a horrible and bloody scene made Ningxue hold onto a table and vomit. Her pretty face turned pale. Zhao Ding tried to hold back the violent churning in his stomach, and his heart was filled with more horror and fear. Such a scene must have been caused by the man and woman in front of him. He simply couldn't imagine how powerful these two people could be, or how powerful was this young man with a calm face. Ningxue finally recovered, but found that Wang Mingyang and Su Yu still walked into the elevator, regardless of whether they followed him or not. Gritting her teeth and stepping over the corpses on the ground, Ningxue ran quickly with the help of Zhao Ding, and finally pressed the up button when the elevator door was about to close. The elevator door opened again, and Ningxue seemed to hear someone's regretful sigh. She couldn't help rolling her eyes, but she still walked into the elevator quickly and stood on the side of the elevator facing Wang Mingyang and Su Yu. Wang Mingyang smiled at Ningxue and leaned against the elevator. Su Yu smiled at Ningxue with a hint of curiosity, and her cute and lovely appearance was no less than Ningxue. The elevator went up quickly and soon reached the 18th floor. Stepping out of the elevator, Ningxue found that there was indeed no standing zombie on this floor. There were many corpses lying on the ground. Judging from the bulging veins on their faces, they should all be mutated zombies. Following Wang Mingyang and the others all the way, Ningxue was surprised to find that they actually lived opposite her room. "Did you live here before?" Ningxue asked, but immediately stopped, thinking that she had asked a very stupid question. The presidential suite on the 18th floor of Liuhe Baoli costs more than 30,000 per night. Judging from the clothes Wang Mingyang and Su Yu are wearing, it is impossible for them to afford to live here. "We came directly here in the afternoon." Su Yu responded with a faint smile. Wang Mingyang was too lazy to talk, opened the door and walked straight in. Su Yu nodded to Ningxue, ran in quickly, and closed the door. Ningxue watched Su Yu close the door with a smile on her face, then turned around, took out the room card, opened the door and entered the room. Zhao Ding glanced at the door opposite, then turned around and walked into the room. Chapter 22, Power Enhancement Ability. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Yu, practice how to control the dark flame yourself. The more precise it is, the better. It is best to control the dark flame to shape it into an animal or a sword. After Wang Mingyang entered the room, he ordered Su Yu. Elemental superpowers are relatively simple. Learn to control energy output, and then learn how to lay out and shape energy. Basically, you have mastered the basic superpowers. Su Yu nodded and started trying to control the dark flame ability while standing in the living room. Wang Mingyang went straight to the master bedroom bathroom, ready to wash up. He had encountered a group of corpses in the restaurant before, and a lot of blood was spattered on his body. His clothes were no longer wearable. Fortunately, someone had lived in this presidential suite before, and he had a lot of clothes. If he just picked one and put it on, it would definitely be worth much more than his street clothes. After a while, the sound of rushing water came from the master bedroom. Su Yu tilted his head, biting his lip and continued to control the flame in his palm. In the room opposite, Ningxue was sitting in the living room with a solemn expression. There was a button-shaped instrument with a red dot flashing on the coffee table. "Miss, can the signal be sent out?" Zhao Ding sat upright on the sofa opposite, looking at the locator on the coffee table, and said worriedly. "This is my first time using this thing. Now the network signal is cut off, and I don't know if this thing still works." Mu Ningxue shook her head and frowned slightly. When her father gave her this locator before, he said that even if there was a general signal jammer, it would not affect the signal transmission of this thing. But now is the end of the world, and the network signal is cut off at the same time, and we don't know why. Under this situation, Mu Ningxue was skeptical about the effectiveness of this locator. If the transmission is successful, under normal circumstances, the helicopter will arrive here in an hour. Zhao Ding nodded. He knew this locator very well. As a personal bodyguard, he had received training in this area, but just like Mu Ningxue's worries, now that the apocalypse is coming, he doesn't know whether the Mujia security base can survive. Is anyone still aware of the signal receiving device, and can a helicopter be dispatched for rescue immediately? All this is unknown. Ignore it for now, Zhao Ding. What are your chances if you face that man? Mu Ningxue leaned back on the sofa, her hands elegantly placed on her raised legs. "Miss, if I'm 10 meters away, my chance is 0. If I can get 3 meters closer, I estimate my winning rate is 90%. Zhao Ding was silent for a while, then raised his head and responded with a serious look. His ability to control steel needles is very strange, and his long-range lethality is too strong. Mu Ningxue frowned and spoke calmly. Yes, I have observed that his ability seems to be the legendary telekinesis. He can control a total of 9 steel needles. Within a range of 7 or 8 meters, zombies cannot get close at all. It is like holding a rifle, and the rifle's bullet can also be deflected at any time. Zhao Ding nodded, with a hint of envy in his eyes. This is why I said there is 0 chance 10 meters away. My enhanced power can only be effective when I am close. It's a pity that Wu Li became a zombie, otherwise the two of us can definitely deal with him if we work together. As Zhao Ding spoke, he stretched out his right hand. As he clenched his fist, the originally normal arm quickly became thicker and thicker. Every vein appeared, and it seemed that there was huge power contained in it. With enhanced power, Zhao Ding is obviously an awakener, but his awakened powers are relatively ordinary. If Wang Mingyang saw it, he would probably think that it was just a D-level power at most. Wu Li was another female bodyguard of Mu Ningxue. When the apocalypse came, the unlucky Wu Li turned into a zombie. The awakening of this power also came from his colleague Wu Li. If she hadn't suddenly mutated and pounced directly on Zhao Ding, in desperation, he directly awakened the power enhancement ability and killed Wu Li with one punch. You are already very powerful, but your ability is not suitable for group battles. If there are too many zombies, you will be injured, which is very dangerous. Wu Li turned into a zombie. There is nothing we can do about it. Fortunately, you are here, otherwise I will definitely not survive. Mu Ningxue smiled slightly, with deep gratitude in her eyes. The two of them hid in the restaurant and saw someone being bitten through the crack in the door. After a while, they turned into zombies and got up. So even if Zhao Ding awakened his superpower during this period, he still didn't dare to rush out and fight the zombies. This is what I should do. Miss, I guess even if the base receives the signal, it won't be able to come over so quickly. You should go and rest for a while first. You didn't sleep well last night, and so many things happened today. I'm sure I'm already very tired. Zhao Ding returned his arms to their original shape, put down his sleeves and said with a distressed look. That's okay, I do need a rest. Please pay attention outside. If rescue arrives, wake me up as soon as possible. Mu Ningxue nodded, stood up and walked towards the master bedroom. Okay, miss, the red light will turn green when the rescue is nearby. I'll call you in advance. Zhao Ding stood up and bowed his head respectfully. Well, thank you for your hard work. Mu Ningxue smiled and waved her hand, walked into the bedroom and closed the door. The next moment her face quickly turned cold. Zhao Ding straightened up, glanced at the master bedroom door, turned around and walked behind the living room door, listening to what was going on outside. After a while, Zhao Ding returned to the sofa and sat down, continuing to feel the changes in power within his body. After Wang Mingyang took a shower, he found a set of brand-name casual clothes and put them on, then returned to the living room with the cleaned Moing. Su Yu's eyes were fixed on the dark flame in the palm of his hand, and he controlled the dark red flame to continuously shape it. One moment it became a sphere, another moment it became a square shape, and now it became a cone shape. Try to maintain the shape with the least energy. If you can change the shape at will, your control over this ability will be greatly improved. Wang Mingyang sat down on the sofa and said slowly, I have tried very hard to control it, but the fire energy is too active and difficult to control. Su Yu frowned and said, the geometric shape that dark flame had just formed shook and returned to the shape of a flame. That's for sure. The flame power itself is quite violent, not to mention that your ability also has dark attributes. The combination of the two is even more difficult to control. But this is also the reason why this dark flame power is so powerful. You have to work harder than others. You can imagine the power energy as a ball of plasticine. If you want to shape this ball of plasticine, you must first have a model in your mind. First, fill the plasticine in as quickly as possible, and then consider the next stage of shaping. Wang Mingyang said lightly. In his previous life, thanks to the attention of Han Taizhan, the immovable king, Wang Mingyang was able to contact many high-level powers with the 5th level strength and get a lot of guidance on power training. It's a pity that his own power is too useless. No matter how he develops it, it can't get out of the category of F level. But those experiences are used to teach Su Yu at this moment, and they are useful. Su Yu silently thought about Wang Mingyang's words and began to try to build a model in his mind first. Seeing Su Yu fall into deep thought, Wang Mingyang picked up the basics of metallurgy in his backpack and opened it to read. Metal control was so useful in the early days of the apocalypse, so he planned to study the book carefully to see if he could get some extra inspiration. If it were someone else, they would have to wait until 7 days later, when crystal nuclei began to appear in zombies and mutants, before they could quickly improve their abilities. But Wang Mingyang was different. He had another way to improve his abilities. By reading books, he could obtain corresponding ability fragments, and accumulating fragments could directly increase the strength of the corresponding abilities, so as long as he read enough books, he could be several blocks ahead of others. Chapter 23 My Eldest Lady. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Night fell, but the curtains had a good light-blocking effect. The lights in the house were bright but did not see outside, detected that the host was familiar with basics of metallurgy, extracted the supernatural power metal control fragment +1, metal control fragment, 3, reward reading value, 100 points. Host's current reading value, 2,541 points. The familiar system prompt sounded. Wang Mingyang closed the book and rubbed his swollen eyebrows. Brother Mingyang, it's the end of the world, why are you still reading? 3 balls of dark flames formed geometric bodies were jumping in Su Yu's palm. After more than an hour of practice, this girl could actually control the dark flames to this extent: sphere, cube, triangular cone. Although the 3 geometric bodies are still slightly distorted in some parts, they are generally complete. And in the past 10 minutes, Su Yu has kept the 3 geometric bodies from collapsing. Wang Mingyang's mouth twitched slightly. Is this girl's talent so scary? In his previous life, when Wang Mingyang was at the 2nd level, he obtained the freezing technique from 300 children's songs. At that time, it took him a whole day to control the energy of the freezing technique to shape it, and he was able to control the freezing technique to form a cube. You know, ice-based superpowers are the most suitable for shaping among all superpowers. Even so, it took Wang Mingyang a day to do it. Although his superpower talent is relatively poor, the energy he has after awakening is definitely not comparable to what he has now, but among the people he knows, Su Yu's talent is also one of the best. Learning never ends. Although superpowers are surreal things, they can still be connected with previous knowledge. Reading more books may help you understand more about the characteristics of your own abilities. Wang Mingyang was talking nonsense seriously. If it weren't for reading to obtain reading points and extract superpower fragments. With his poor nature, how could he take the initiative to read books? That would be asking for trouble. But now Wang Mingyang has to torture himself, which is the basis for his continued strength in the end times. Oh, that's right, I'll read more in the future. Suyu tilted her head and thought for a while, then nodded seriously. Wang Mingyang's mouth twitched slightly. Sister, I read books because of the benefits, you still take it seriously, but Wang Mingyang thought it was good. He used reading to gain knowledge as a cover, at least no one knew he had a golden finger. He walked to the door and looked out through the cat's eye. The door of the opposite room was closed, and there was no movement in the corridor. After a moment of hesitation, Wang Mingyang sat down on the floor against the door, and several silver beads in his pocket floated out, and began to twist and deform in front of him. While practicing the ability to control metal, Wang Mingyang's thoughts gradually dispersed. In the opposite house, 2 hours passed. It was already past 8 o'clock in the evening, and it was pitch black outside. There were only 2 wall lamps on in the living room, which seemed a little dim. Zhao Ding looked at the locator on the coffee table that was still flashing red, and slowly lit a cigarette, his eyes flashing in the smoke. Ningxue doesn't like the smell of cigarettes, so the bodyguards around her basically don't dare to smoke. Zhao Ding usually endures it, occasionally hiding aside to smoke. And then he has to spray himself with some freshener and add a stick of chewing gum to remove the smell, but for the generous salary that arrives on time every month, he doesn't care. At this moment, Zhao Ding has no mind to care about these things, and all kinds of emotions in his heart make him irritable. The rescue has not arrived yet. Zhao Ding doesn't know if it will come. 2 hours have passed, and it is likely that it will not arrive. A few hours ago, he still liked this job very much. Every day he accompanied the beautiful lady who was like a fairy, and the other female bodyguards around him were also very beautiful. Such a day is simply heaven for Zhao Ding, but Wang Mingyang's words made him suddenly realize that such a paradise would never return. Feeling the great power in his arms, Zhao Ding suddenly murmured to himself, perhaps, this is another paradise. After hesitating for a moment, Zhao Ding took a deep puff of cigarette, extinguished the cigarette but in his hand on the coffee table, took off his straight suit and threw it on the sofa. Zhao Ding pulled off his tie, unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of his shirt, and then slowly rolled up his sleeves. After rubbing his palm on his thigh for a while, Zhao Ding slowly got up and picked up the locator on the table. The red dot of the locator flickered in his eyes. After a while, Zhao Ding slowly walked to the door of the master bedroom, held the door handle tightly and slowly pressed it down, and the door of the master bedroom opened quietly. Zhao Ding pushed the door open and stood at the door, calling out in a low voice, Miss. Miss. The dim light in the living room shone in through the door. On the big bed in the middle of the master bedroom, Ningxue's enchanting figure was covered by a thin blanket, looking hazy and seductive. Zhao Ding waited for a while, but Ningxue did not give him any response. He slowly stepped back, and the door of the master bedroom closed. The light went out, and the bedroom became dark again. A faint exhalation sounded, and Ningxue's tense body under the thin blanket slowly relaxed. Her eyes opened in the darkness, with uneasiness, fear, anxiety and hesitation in her eyes. Her white and tender hands tightly grasped a dinner knife, and her fingers had begun to turn white. As she exhaled a long breath, she slowly loosened it. Ningxue was not asleep. An hour ago, Zhao Ding did not knock on the door, so she guessed that the rescue should not have arrived, but 2 hours passed and Zhao Ding still didn't come to inform her. Besides the low roars of zombies, there was no sound of any helicopters outside. Ningxue was desperate, and rescue was unlikely to come. What made her even more desperate was that Zhao Ding opened the door. But he didn't knock on the door, but opened the door directly. This behavior would never have happened before, but Zhao Ding did it. Ningxue was a smart woman. When she was alone, she repeatedly pondered the meaning of Wang Mingyang's words. Facts proved that Wang Mingyang was not wrong. The status and majesty that money once brought were gone at this moment. What's more terrifying is that she, who had lost everything, was now alone with a man who had gained new power. Ningxue's heart was up and down. She had been trained by her father since she was a child, and she had countless workplace leadership skills in her mind, but they were useless in the end of the world at this moment. She knew very well how tempting her delicate body was to others. Zhao Ding, who had just been transferred to her side not long ago, at that time, the eyes that drifted towards her from time to time were mixed with hidden animal desires and greed. Mu Ningxue had already noticed it. Originally, she wanted her father to transfer a female bodyguard. Unexpectedly, the end of the world came, and Wu Li, who had been with her for 5 years, turned into a zombie in the first place, leaving only her and Zhao Ding alone. Thinking of this, Mu Ningxue felt countless goosebumps all over her body. I don't know how long it took, maybe just a few minutes. Bang! With a muffled sound, the door suddenly opened and hit the wall directly. Zhao Ding's tall figure appeared at the door. The light in the living room cast his shadow directly on Mu Ningxue's bed. My eldest lady. It seems that rescue will not come. Chapter 24 Desperate Mu Ningxue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wang Mingyang's ears twitched slightly, and there seemed to be some movement coming from the room opposite. Recalling some rumors he heard in his previous life, he felt that they might be verified tonight. Raising his eyebrows, Wang Mingyang stood up slowly. Several metal objects in front of him turned into silver beads again. He turned around and opened the door. He ordered Suyu without looking back. Keep the energy in your body more than half. You can practice in the room. I will go out for a while. Oh, okay, brother Mingyang. Although Suyu was confused about Wang Mingyang going out so late at night, she already knew Wang Mingyang's behavior style, so she didn't ask any more questions and focused on training her own abilities. Wang Mingyang closed the door gently, looked at the door opposite thoughtfully, and leaned against the wall quietly. The lights in the corridor were bright, and he didn't bother to turn off the bulbs at the moment. In a few hours, the power would naturally be cut off. Inside Mu Ningxue's house, the door was kicked open by Zhao Ding, and the loud sound shook Mu Ningxue's delicate body, forcibly controlling the fear in her heart. Mu Ningxue stretched out her hand to turn on the bedside lamp. Her voluptuous and plump body slowly sat up against the head of the bed, and she reached out to smooth her hair. Mu Ningxue's fair and tender face was completely calm. Zhao Ding, you actually broke into my room. Do you want to betray me? Betrayal, no, my eldest lady. Having made up his mind, Zhao Ding crossed his arms and leaned against the door frame with a lazy attitude, his eyes scanning Mu Ningxue's body wantonly. Between us, it has always been just a transaction. You pay me my salary and I'll keep you safe. That's all. Mu Ningxue raised her head indifferently, holding the knife in her right hand tighter and tighter under the thin quilt. That's true. So now do I owe you wages? Not before. Zhao Ding shook his head calmly, and then his eyes became more aggressive. But starting today, I guess you won't be able to pay. So, I can only come in advance to collect the reward I want. How many do you want? Mu Ningxue bit her lip lightly, her voice cold. Little did he know that this action made Zhao Ding's eyes blaze with desire, and he lowered his hands unnaturally. No, miss, have you forgotten? That man said that your wealth is yourself. Zhao Ding walked forward slowly, and the heat all over his body made him swallow his saliva. The next reward I need to collect for protecting you, miss. Is you, miss. Impossible. I don't need your protection, get out of here. Mu Ningxue finally couldn't stand it anymore, rolled over, put the hand holding the knife behind her back, and shouted angrily at Zhao Ding across the bed. Miss, it's not up to you now. Here, I have the final say. Zhao Ding's muscles were all tangled, and his strength-enhancing ability directly destroyed his shirt, revealing his strong upper body. Don't come here. If you take one more step forward, I will die with you. Mu Ningxue felt anxious and pointed the knife in her hand directly at Zhao Ding. Now Zhao Ding wants to use strength, but she has no way. Zhao Ding is already very strong, and he has awakened the strength-enhancing ability, which makes him even more powerful. Stop struggling, your knife can't hurt me. Just lie down and I will make you very comfortable. Zhao Ding laughed evilly, casually tore off Beng She's shirt, and walked towards Mu Ningxue with his upper body naked. Even if Mu Ningxue had learned some fighting skills, she would never be Zhao Ding's opponent. Mu Ningxue knew that she could not defeat Zhao Ding, so she suddenly put the knife on her neck. A trace of bright red appeared on her swan-like neck, and she looked at Zhao Ding with piercing eyes. Don't force me. Even if I can't kill you, I can kill myself. Zhao Ding paused, then smiled, and moved forward again. Hey, don't worry, even if you wipe your neck, your body will still be warm, and I don't mind if you don't respond. I'll take you to the corpse group when it's all over. Once it's thrown away, no one knows what happened. You pervert, you are a devil. A beast. Even if I am shattered to pieces, I will not let you succeed. Mu Ningxue shouted. Zhao Ding's words made her extremely desperate. This man usually treated her with respect and even some flattery. But she never imagined that Zhao Ding would attack her on the first night of the apocalypse. Glancing towards the floor-to-ceiling window, Mu Ningxue bit her silver teeth, threw the knife in her hand towards Zhao Ding, and quickly ran towards the floor-to-ceiling window. Zhao Ding's eyes tightened. The intention of Mu Ningxue's movement was too obvious. He slapped the knife away casually. Zhao Ding exerted force on his feet and quickly jumped over the big bed with his whole body, grabbing Mu Ningxue's jade feet. Ah! With a muffled groan, Mu Ningxue flew toward the floor-to-ceiling window and landed heavily on the carpet, nearly 10 centimeters away from the floor-to-ceiling window. She almost smashed the window and fell. Hey, let me see where you run now. Zhao Ding grasped Mu Ningxue's ankle with his right hand and slowly pulled it towards him. Mu Ningxue kicked Zhao Ding with all her strength. At this moment, she could not remember all the various fighting skills she had learned. Zhao Ding swallowed his saliva and smiled. Mu Ningxue's long legs were exposed to his eyes, which made him even more excited. Even though he had thought about it countless times in his mind, at this moment, it really seemed that he could experience it for himself. There was only a blank in Zhao Ding's mind. Only one voice kept shouting, "Own her! Own her! Own her!" Mu Ningxue was pulled to her side by Zhao Ding. After struggling to no avail, a pair of white teeth bit Zhao Ding's shoulder. Zhao Ding groaned, and in the severe pain, he swung his hands hard, throwing Mu Ningxue directly onto the big bed. The soft big bed shook violently a few times, and Mu Ningxue grabbed the table lamp and smashed it on Zhao Ding's face. His right fist hit hard, and the huge force directly blew up the table lamp. Zhao Ding laughed and pounced on the big bed. Mu Ningxue screamed repeatedly, turned over and got out of bed to avoid Zhao Ding's pounce, and ran out of the door with a roll. Zhao Ding followed closely, strode out of the door, pounced again, and pressed Mu Ningxue directly on the carpet in the living room. Hee, it turns out that the eldest lady likes to play here, then let's try something new. Let me go. You beast. Let me go. Mu Ningxue screamed wildly. Tears could not stop flowing down, her hands were firmly held by Zhao Ding, and it was useless to twist wildly. The whole body was pressed down by Zhao Ding. At this moment, she was really desperate. If she had to be defiled by Zhao Ding, she would rather die. But now, she couldn't even die. Why didn't the rescue come? Why didn't anyone come to save her? Chapter 25. Kill him. I am yours. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mu Ningxue's face was filled with despair and death. She tilted her head to one side, her eyes gradually becoming hollow. Zhao Ding freed up a hand to caress Mu Ningxue's white and tender cheeks, with a lustful light in his eyes, and slowly began to draw his hand across his neck, reaching towards the snow-capped peaks and deep valleys. The next moment, a voice suddenly sounded above the two of them. Hey, isn't this our Miss Mu? Why are you so anxious when you start playing in the living room? Zhao Ding's right hand stretched out to Xiafeng suddenly stopped and he raised his head suddenly. I don't know when I saw the man in the room opposite, sitting lazily on the sofa with his legs crossed, looking at them with an unfinished expression on his face. How did you get in? Who are you? Zhao Ding stood up suddenly, his muscles all taut. He could no longer care about Mu Ningxue on the ground and looked at Wang Mingyang warily. I opened the door and came in. As for who I am, Wang Mingyang said calmly with deep eyes, it's not important. What's important is, whether you will die or live next. Ignoring Zhao Ding's sudden murderous intent, Wang Mingyang looked at Ningxue, who was pulling her skirt to cover her body while moving back to stay away from Zhao Ding. "Miss Mu, do you still want to do business with me?" A devilish voice sounded, and Ningxue suddenly raised her head and uttered a sentence full of hate. "Kill him. I'm yours." The words were simple and clear. Wang Mingyang smiled slightly when he heard the words, stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers, "Quick. Then, the deal is done." That when Zhao Ding asked Wang Mingyang that question, he already knew that there was nothing he could do. With an angry roar, his body suddenly grew a small circle, and his seemingly huge right fist swung towards Wang Mingyang. Wang Mingyang's body suddenly shot forward and he punched out without hesitation. He wanted to try out the difference between his twice-strengthened body and Zhao Ding, who was obviously a power-enhanced person with awakened powers. Two fists, one big and one small, collided together, and a muffled sound exploded in the living room. Wang Mingyang took several steps back in succession, while Zhao Ding only took 3 steps back. In the strength competition, Zhao Ding's strength-enhancing ability really had the advantage. "Ha, I thought you were so powerful, but it turns out you are nothing more than that." Zhao Ding couldn't help but sneer coldly when he saw Wang Mingyang retreating too much. Shaking his painful and numb right hand, Wang Mingyang smiled silently, reached into his pocket, grabbed 4 silver beads and threw them in the air. "You seem to have forgotten that I am also a person with awakened powers." The 4 silver beads quickly stretched and lengthened, forming 4 steel needles flashing with cold light. The sharp tips were pointed at Zhao Ding, and they shot out in the next moment. Cold sweat broke out on Zhao Ding's head. With his enhanced reaction speed, he slapped a steel needle with his right hand, but the other 3 steel needles pierced his shoulders and chest fiercely. The sharp steel needle came out from the other end with a trace of blood. Fortunately, Zhao Ding twisted his body and was not directly pierced through the vital part. "Stop. We have something to discuss." Zhao Ding quickly rolled behind the sofa, crouching with only his eyes exposed, and roared at the top of his lungs. As soon as Wang Mingyang's superpower came out, Zhao Ding found that he was no match at all. He was seriously injured in one move. His mind changed quickly and he could only beg for mercy. "Sorry, you have to die today." Wang Mingyang ignored it, flicked his fingers, and 4 steel needles pierced Zhao Ding again. Not to mention that he had already agreed to Ningxue's deal. Wang Mingyang hated the scum that backfired on his master. This reminded him of the pain of being betrayed by his favorite people and teammates in his previous life. That kind of despair and unwillingness seemed to be flooding into his heart again at this moment. Ningxue leaned against the TV cabinet, clutching the skirt on her chest tightly with both hands. Her beautiful eyes were staring at Zhao Ding's figure with overwhelming hatred. When Zhao Ding begged for mercy, she originally thought Wang Mingyang would hesitate for a moment, but what she didn't expect was that Wang Mingyang refused without hesitation, and the steel needle under his control became more and more cruel. Zhao Ding rolled hard towards the master bedroom, ignoring the steel needle stuck in his back. He grunted and rushed into the master bedroom. The door of the master bedroom was thrown hard behind him. There was a loud bang, followed by 3 muffled sounds, and 3 steel needles plunged into the solid wood door. Sensing the location of another steel needle in the master bedroom, Wang Mingyang calmed down and kicked open the master bedroom door. Zhao Ding picked up a chair and threw it directly at Wang Mingyang, who stepped into the master bedroom. The other 5 silver beads in his pocket quickly flew up and turned into a thin shield in front of him. The wooden chair hit the thin shield, and wood chips flew into the air. The entire chair fell into pieces, but the seemingly thin shield was extremely strong. Wang Mingyang stepped forward and kicked Zhao Ding's chest with his right foot. Zhao Ding reacted quickly and put his hands in front of him to block Wang Mingyang's powerful kick. With the help of a kick on Zhao Ding's arm, Wang Mingyang's figure jumped up 1 meter. The shield that blocked the wooden chair just now quickly decomposed and stretched, and flew towards his raised right hand under Wang Mingyang's control. The shield turned into a shiny horizontal knife, solidified the moment Wang Mingyang clenched his hands, and fell into his hands just right. "Ho!" Wang Mingyang clenched the horizontal knife with both hands, and then slashed it down towards Zhao Ding below. Zhao Ding saw this wonderful scene through the gap between his hands. He was horrified in his heart. He exerted force on his feet and retreated quickly, regardless of whether it was a window or a wall behind him. The horizontal knife brought up a smear of blood and slashed hard to the ground. Zhao Ding screamed, a slash was made on his chest by the horizontal knife, and half of his left arm flew up with blood. In a flash, Wang Mingyang had severely injured Zhao Ding and cut off a part of his left hand. Ah, what the hell is this ability of yours? Who the hell are you? Why are you helping her? Why? Zhao Ding screamed wildly, holding the broken hand tightly. The knife wound on his chest and the pain of the broken hand made his face distorted. At this moment, he only had endless hatred for Wang Mingyang in his heart, as well as deep confusion and unwillingness. How the hell is this a telekinetic ability? Can telekinesis make a metal ball twist and liquefy, turning it into a shield and a knife? Zhao Ding was already confused. He originally thought that Wang Mingyang was just the kind of telekinesis in the movie, controlling objects to attack, but he didn't expect that he would be disabled after a metal transformation. I said, this is a deal. Wang Mingyang shook off the blood on the horizontal sword and said helplessly. Deal? I can also trade with you. What do you want? Zhao Ding endured the pain and gritted his teeth. You can't. Miss Mu sold herself to me. What value do you have that is worth me abandoning such a beautiful woman to choose you? Wang Mingyang tilted his head, with a curious look on his face. Fuck, I am the chosen one. Only you and I have evolved superpowers. Isn't that enough? Zhao Ding roared, with a look of indignation on his face. The chosen one? Huh, stop it, brother. This joke is really a bit cold. You should get on the road quickly. Wang Mingyang was stunned, and then laughed out loud. This Zhao Ding actually thought he was the chosen one. At best, he had a D-level power enhancement superpower. What did he want to be the chosen one? Little did he know that Ningxue, who was almost defiled by him, would awaken an S-level ice and snow superpower in the future. Even this might not be the chosen one. Just a D-level superpower awakener, what a joke. Chapter 26 Rebirth First Kill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wang Mingyang flicked his fingers, and 4 steel needles stabbed into the joints of Zhao Ding's limbs. Zhao Ding groaned, his strength seemed to be exhausted, and he fell backwards. Wang Mingyang stepped forward with the knife in his hand, stabbing straight into Zhao Ding's heart with the horizontal knife in his hand. The sharp tip of the knife pierced the French window behind Zhao Ding, there was a crashing sound of glass shattering, and Zhao Ding grabbed the blade that had pierced his heart with his right hand. He stared at Wang Mingyang, who was very close, with a pair of eyes full of resentment. In this world, there will be many people awakening superpowers. But what you awakened is just the lowest level of power-enhancing superpowers. Just like that, do you think you are the chosen one? Wang Mingyang looked at Zhao Ding with a mocking look on his face, and uttered words that only the two of them could hear. At this moment, Zhao Ding's mouth was bleeding, his throat made a goose-goose sound, and he could no longer spit out a word. A trash like you still want to possess Ningxue, the future goddess of ice and snow? She will awaken with S-level ice and snow powers. There is a whole 4 levels difference between you and her. Wang Mingyang leaned against Zhao Ding's ear and softly uttered a few words that contained huge secrets. Zhao Ding's pupils suddenly widened. The next moment, Wang Mingyang suddenly pulled out the horizontal knife and kicked Zhao Ding, who was not dead yet. Kicked out the window. A few seconds later, a muffled sound of bang came, and the zombies wandering around were attracted by the sound of Zhao Ding's fall and quickly gathered around. Wang Mingyang stood by the window and looked down. Zhao Ding was vomiting blood, and his body seemed to have collapsed into a puddle of mud. His eyes that were staring at the sky seemed to contain a lot of confusion and unwillingness. Looking at the first human being he killed with his own hands after his rebirth, Wang Mingyang felt a faint sigh in his heart, recalling some rumors he heard in his previous life. At that time, he and his teammates were drinking wine in the tavern of the shelter. A group of people were gossiping there, and one of them talked about the ice and snow goddess Ningxue. It is said that Ningxue in her previous life seemed to have awakened her ice and snow powers on the second day of the apocalypse. Ningxue, who was originally dignified, generous, and gentle, has become a bit unfriendly to strangers, and she is even more cold-blooded towards the men she meets in the apocalypse. Any rapist who commits a crime in her hands will have his penis frozen to death. Basically no one of the scraps ends well. Judging from what happened tonight, there is a high probability that Ningxue in her previous life awakened her ice and snow powers at the critical moment when Zhao Ding was about to succeed. After all, many people suddenly awaken their superpowers when they face a crisis or suffer huge stimulation. It is also possible that the ice and snow power was awakened after being violated by Zhao Ding, and his temperament changed drastically. I just don't know if Ningxue, who was rescued by Wang Mingyang, will awaken the S-level ice and snow power in this life. The horizontal knife in his hand turned into liquid and condensed into 5 silver beads again. The 4 steel needles were retracted when Zhao Ding was kicked away, and the 9 silver beads were put back into his pocket. Wang Mingyang looked down with an indifferent expression. The corpses had gathered, making excited gnawing sounds, and the sound of inaudible footsteps came from behind. Where is Zhao Ding? Is he dead? Ningxue's voice filled with hatred sounded. Come and take a look, maybe you can see a little bit. Wang Mingyang said calmly without looking back. Ningxue frowned and walked forward, holding on to the frame of the floor-to-ceiling window, and looked down with some fear. Nearly 200 zombies had gathered on the ground. Except for the dozen zombies in the center who were feasting, the rest the zombies roared aimlessly. After confirming that Zhao Ding was indeed dead without a burial place, Ningxue let out a long sigh of relief. The dense zombies below made her feel sick after she recovered. The outfit you are wearing is really not suitable for the current situation. Change into clothes that are more conducive to movement and come with me. Wang Mingyang looked Ningxue up and down and said calmly. Okay. Just wait. Ningxue spoke calmly and looked at him indifferently. Wang Mingyang smiled dumbly, turned around and walked out of the house, closing the bedroom door. The master bedroom suddenly became dark, with only one bedside lamp still on. Ningxue stared at the bedroom door, sighed for a long time, turned around and walked towards the closet. Wang Mingyang sat down on the sofa in the living room, rubbing 2 silver beads with his fingers, recalling the brief battle just now. Although he has strengthened his body twice, his strength is obviously not as good as Zhao Ding, who has strengthened his body once and awakened the strength-enhancing ability. However, he is much stronger than Zhao Ding in terms of speed. After a period of familiarity with the metal control ability, it becomes easier to change the form and the speed is also fast, which means that there are more tricks that can be played in actual combat. He did not use space cutting in the battle just now. Facing a Zhao Ding, he did not need to use S-level powers, but Wang Mingyang wanted to hide his clumsiness more. At present, except for Su Yu, no one else has seen him use space cutting. What Ningxue and Zhao Ding saw was the ability to control metal from beginning to end, and they even suspected it was telekinesis. Thinking of this, Wang Mingyang decided to focus on developing the metal control ability first. The space cutting ability was hidden for the time being. Maybe one day he would be able to perform extraordinary feats. I'm fine. Just when Wang Mingyang was thinking a lot, Ningxue opened the door of the master bedroom and walked out. Wang Mingyang looked up. He was wearing a black sportswear and purple sneakers. Ningxue tied up her long hair and put an apricot sports cap on her head. Her graceful body could not be hidden even by the sportswear. Let's go to the opposite side. We can't stay here. The French window is broken. If we are late, mutant creatures will probably come in. Standing up with his knees, Wang Mingyang stood up and walked out first. Ningxue bit her lower lip tightly, reached out to pick up the locator on the table, and found that the locator had been destroyed by Zhao Ding at some point and was completely unusable. Ningxue could only throw the locator away and quickly followed Wang Mingyang. Opening the door and walking to the opposite side, Wang Mingyang held the handle tightly, and a surge of energy surged out, covering the entire door lock. As Wang Mingyang turned it gently, the door that had been locked was directly opened. Wang Mingyang walked into the room and sat down on the sofa in the living room. Su Yu, who was practicing controlling the dark flame, suddenly saw Ningxue in sportswear walking in, and the geometric dark flame in his hand immediately collapsed. Brother Mingyang, what is she doing? Su Yu looked at Wang Mingyang nervously. Something happened just now. From now on, she will be considered a member of our small team. Wang Mingyang nodded lightly and explained. Suyu cracked. It's not long since she went out, and you brought this beautiful woman back, so you are not impotent. Are you just not interested in me? Wang Mingyang didn't know that Suyu had so many dramas in his mind. He pointed at Suyu and said to Ningxue, who had just closed the door. My name is Wang Mingyang. As you can see, my ability is to control metal. Her name is Suyu. She has awakened the dark flame ability. In terms of combat power, Zhao Ding will not be her opponent with one sword. Ningxue was shocked when she heard this. When she just entered the room, she saw Suyu controlling a dark red flame. She didn't expect Wang Mingyang to have such a high evaluation of her. Ningxue didn't know that Zhao Ding's level was actually just like that, but she didn't awaken her ability at the moment. It can be said that she was completely a scum. She still envied Suyu, who Wang Mingyang said Zhao Ding couldn't beat with one sword. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 27 Doomsday Speculations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hello, my name is Ningxue. Ningxue stepped forward generously and extended her jade hand to the somewhat aggrieved Suyu. Hello, I'm Suyu. Suyu curled his lips, but still extended his hand to shake hands with Ningxue, and then walked aside to continue to hone his ability to control superpowers. Ningxue felt Suyu's faint hostility and was a little confused. When she saw Wang Mingyang, she couldn't help but suddenly realized and smiled bitterly. Wang Mingyang gestured to Ningxue to sit on the sofa beside her. For a long while, Ningxue watched Suyu controlling the dark flame to form various shapes there, and couldn't help but turn her head to look at Wang Mingyang in confusion. Why can you all awaken superpowers, but I can't? Most people can awaken superpowers, it depends on talent, sooner or later. Wang Mingyang said lightly. How do you know this? Ningxue frowned and asked in confusion. I guessed. Wang Mingyang said nonsense seriously, Ningxue. In fact, as long as you dare to muster up the courage to fight the zombies, you will most likely awaken your superpowers earlier. Wang Mingyang glanced at Ningxue, who was speechless, and continued. But I don't have a weapon. Ningxue's eyes lit up when she saw Mo casually thrown on the sofa, and then she became a little gloomy. I can give you a horizontal sword, but you have to kill the zombies yourself. Okay. Ningxue nodded without hesitation. Remember your promise to me. Wang Mingyang put out the cigarette butt and stared at Ningxue. I remember. Ningxue's body trembled slightly, her face was a little pale, but she still admitted it stubbornly. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your body, and I won't let you sleep with me. Wang Mingyang stood up and walked towards the kitchen in the suite. Ningxue's eyes flashed with surprise. She knew how tempting her body was to men, but the man in front of her said without hesitation that he was not interested in her body. While she felt a little relieved, she also felt a little resentful. I'll make you a knife and teach you how to fight. When you awaken your superpowers, I'll teach you how to exercise your superpowers and become stronger quickly. Wang Mingyang waved at the kitchen utensils, and all the knives, forks and spatulas on the shelf floated up. But, all this is not free. I need you to obey me, absolutely. Many metal objects floated in the air, and even the knife he made for Suyu flew up and surrounded Wang Mingyang. As he finished speaking, Ningxue was surprised to see that the metal objects quickly melted into balls of liquid. As Wang Mingyang waved his palm lightly, a dozen balls of large and small metal liquids gathered together to form an iron ball with a diameter of 20 centimeters. Suyu looked up and saw an iron ball slowly floating towards her under Wang Mingyang's control, and she reacted immediately. The three geometric flames in her hand quickly disintegrated and merged. Suyu controlled the dark red flame in her palm and floated to the bottom of the iron ball and began to burn. The iron ball quickly turned red and melted, wisps of black smoke rose, and wisps of dark red lines penetrated into the metal liquid. After a few minutes, Wang Mingyang controlled the dark red metal liquid and quickly stretched it into a knife shape. As Wang Mingyang's fingers swiped through it, the embryos of two horizontal knives quickly took shape. Carefully polishing the two knives, Wang Mingyang used the metal control ability to the extreme, arranging and combining the internal structures of the two knives to form a blade that was tougher and sharper than the alloy. Finally, Wang Mingyang stretched out his hand and slowly wiped the two blades that had cooled down, and the blades that could cut hair were sharpened, reaching out and grabbing the two knives, waving a few times and chopping on the coffee table. A corner of the solid wood coffee table slipped off, and the broken edge was as smooth as a mirror. "Good knife," Wang Mingyang couldn't help but praise. The blades of the two knives had dark red lines, which seemed to contain the burning and erosion capabilities carried by Su Yu's dark flame ability, which was really extraordinary. Throwing the two knives to Su Yu and Ningxue, Wang Mingyang activated his supernatural power again, controlling the 9 silver beads and the horizontal sword ink shadow, and condensed them into steel needles and horizontal swords after being calcined by Su Yu's dark flame. Although the steel needles and horizontal swords were shrunk a little, they were tougher and sharper. Wang Mingyang thought about it and realized that the steel needles were indeed very useful. He then controlled a metal ornament in the room and quickly decomposed and condensed into dozens of pea-sized metal balls under the burning of Su Yu's dark flame. These metal balls can be turned into sharp steel needles at any time when needed. By then, the number of steel needles he controls can directly reach 100. "Brother Mingyang, why don't you make some small flying swords?" "Flying swords to kill enemies. How cool." Su Yu tilted his head and smiled with some yearning. Wang Mingyang rolled his eyes, put away the peas, and said impatiently, "A steel needle is enough. Why do we need a flying sword? Do you think it takes energy to control these metal shapes? It's useless to waste that little energy to make a nice shape." "It's useless." Su Yu was stunned by the series of words, but after thinking about it, it seemed that Wang Mingyang was right, so he had to stick out his tongue and sit aside to recover his supernatural energy. Wang Mingyang sheathed the Moying sword, sat on the sofa, took out basics of metallurgy and continued to read. "What are your plans? Are we going to stay here forever?" Ningxue was surprised at the magic and power of the two people's supernatural powers, but still resisted her curiosity and asked about their future plans. "If we can spend tonight safely, we will find a car tomorrow morning, go to Xiqing district, and go back to Su Yu's house. We will make plans later." Wang Mingyang continued to read the book without raising his head. "What do you mean by spending tonight peacefully? With you two here, are you still afraid of those zombies?" Ningxue was confused. "The danger is not the zombies, but the mutated creatures." "What the hell? Mutated creature?" Su Yu and Ningxue wondered at the same time. "Yes, do you think that only human beings mutate in this world? Is there anything else?" Su Yu asked doubtfully. "The reason why humans turn into zombies is not the so-called virus. It is probably caused by some unknown energy." Wang Mingyang raised his head, looked at the two women and said calmly, "Otherwise, it would be impossible for the whole world to mutate at the same time. I guess that this may be a special energy that covers the whole world and contains some kind of negative power. Most people will not be able to withstand the negative power of this special energy. The impact turned into mindless zombies, but a few people were lucky enough to survive and have the foundation to awaken their powers." "Then why do people who are bitten by zombies turn into zombies?" Ningxue couldn't help but ask. She saw with her own eyes that people who were bitten turned into zombies and got up. The energy in the surviving people may maintain a delicate balance. Once bitten, the balance will be broken under the impact of other people's negative energy, and then turn into a new zombie. Wang Mingyang thought for a moment. Summarized slightly. In fact, these statements are the most likely theories summarized by people in the previous life, because after the end of the world, human beings have awakened all kinds of strange powers. Even those who have not yet awakened can clearly feel that their physical fitness is constantly improving after a while, and all the signs are like the revival of spiritual energy in the legend of Blue Star. But what is different from the end of the world in this life is that in the last life, no one saw the red light that penetrated everything and the faint murmuring voice. This strange phenomenon was personally felt by Wang Mingyang, who had returned from Rebirth. At this moment, the moon. Hanging high in the sky at night is no longer as white as a disk, but has a faint blood light, making it look a bit strange. Chapter 28 Mutated Mosquitoes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Late at night, Wang Mingyang and the other two only used a wall lamp for lighting, and the room seemed a little dim. It was already 12 o'clock in the morning, but the three of them had no sleep. There were all kinds of noises outside very early, zombies roaring, gunshots, crying, explosions. When she heard the gunshots, Ningxue was still very excited, thinking that the government should launch a rescue operation, but she was coldly ridiculed by Wang Mingyang. Sure enough, after more than 10 minutes, the gunshots became sparse and gradually stopped. Why do you think it's not a government rescue? Ningxue asked puzzledly. First of all, it's night now, which is not conducive to large-scale operations. Secondly, the zombie outbreak is global, and the army is no exception. It may even suffer greater losses because of the large number of soldiers gathered. Thirdly, many senior officials have become zombies, and the remaining people can't organize so quickly. If they really organize, the gunshots will be much more dense than before. Wang Mingyang explained lightly that these had happened in the previous life. The army officially launched the rescue on the 10th day of the apocalypse. Maybe because of the lack of manpower, the rescue efforts were not very strong. As Wang Mingyang said, the army suffered heavy losses, and that rescue operation once again killed many soldiers. Then why don't we wait for rescue here, but go across the city center to Xiqing district? Anyway, there are still a lot of food and drinks on the 6th floor. Ningxue looked puzzled. I want to go back to my mother. Suyu raised his head and said firmly. So that's it. Ningxue turned her head and looked at Suyu in surprise, then glanced at Wang Mingyang, and then nodded. A rustling noise came into his ears, and Wang Mingyang stretched his waist, and dozens of small metal beads in his pocket floated out one after another. What you need to do now is to obey, not to ask questions. Wang Mingyang stood up slowly, and the metal beads around him quickly stretched and transformed into steel needles. One day you can defeat me, you can be your Miss Mu again. Ningxue bit her lip, her face stiff and unwilling, as if she had not yet changed from the identity of a young lady. She tightened her right hand holding the horizontal sword, but still pursed her lips and whispered, yes. Suyu smiled, looking at Wang Mingyang with a hint of spirit in her eyes. She didn't expect Wang Mingyang to say such blunt words directly, but he actually supported her. You protect yourself, so you will fight in a while. Try to cover your body with dark flames. Wang Mingyang closed his eyes and listened for a while, opened his eyes and said solemnly. Did something happen? Suyu stood up without hesitation and held the horizontal sword beside him tightly. The night is the world of mutant creatures, especially in this season. You should know what stuff is the most. Suyu, mosquitoes, Ningxue, rats, Wang Mingyang nodded and said solemnly, you are all right, but judging from the sound, it should be mutant mosquitoes that come now. Mosquitoes should be okay. The doors and windows are closed, so they can't get in, right? Suyu clapped his hands with his horizontal sword, and said somewhat for granted. The previous mosquitoes were not okay, but the mutated mosquitoes are definitely not that simple. You will know in a while. Wang Mingyang smiled and didn't explain. When the mosquitoes came in a while, they would naturally understand. The three stood in the living room. Wang Mingyang thought for a while, and then took the two women into the master bedroom, closed the other doors and windows, turned off all the lights, and only opened the curtains of the master bedroom. The cold moonlight outside the window shone in. Although the moon seemed to be covered with a layer of blood light that was almost invisible to the naked eye, it was still as white as before. Buzz buzz buzz. Through the glass of the French window, the three of them could clearly hear the sound of flapping wings. Suyu and Ningxue looked at each other, and the two women couldn't help but get closer to each other. The sound became clearer and louder, as if there were an unusually large number of mosquitoes. From time to time, the sound of broken glass came from a distance, mixed with the shrill screams of some survivors, and all kinds of chaotic sounds attracted the roars of nearby zombies. A black shadow suddenly flashed in front of the French window, and Su Yu and Mu Ningxue immediately widened their eyes and looked at the French window. After the black shadow, there were a dozen mosquitoes as big as small bowls lying on the French window under the moonlight. The ferocious body has a sharp and slender mouthparts, and the length of the whole mouthparts is close to half of the body. The blade-like sharp wings left traces on the French window, and the 6 long legs were full of barbs, which looked extremely terrifying. A dozen mutant mosquitoes seemed to have discovered the 3 people, stretched out their sharp mouthparts, and pecked at the glass window fiercely. It was visible to the naked eye that tiny holes appeared on the glass. Some mosquitoes flew over and hit the glass crazily. The screams that kept ringing around, the dull roars of the zombies, the sizzling sounds of the mutant mosquitoes scratching the glass, all kinds of noisy sounds made Mu Ningxue feel as if she was in hell, and the actual situation was not much better than being in hell. Su Yu clenched the horizontal sword. She had experienced battles and was much better than Mu Ningxue's trembling body. A dark red color slowly spread on the blade. Hua la la. A sound of glass breaking sounded, and the French window finally couldn't hold up, and the mutant mosquitoes rushed to fly towards the 3 people. Wang Mingyang took a deep breath, and the steel needles beside him shot out. A burst of puffs sounded, and several mutant mosquitoes were pierced through the head by the steel needles, but as the French window shattered, more mutant mosquitoes swarmed in. Wang Mingyang had to cheer up and control the dozens of steel needles around him to shoot continuously. Occasionally, a fish that slipped through the net flew close to him, and Su Yu would take the initiative to raise the knife and move forward. The mosquitoes as big as a small bowl were considered to be relatively large targets. Su Yu basically solved them one by one with the dark flame ability. Mu Ningxue followed suit. Although her knife was not blessed with superpowers, Wang Mingyang also spent a lot of effort when making these 2 horizontal swords. The sharp blade can be regarded as cutting iron like mud. Dealing with these primary mutant mosquitoes is as smooth as a hot knife cutting butter. Under Wang Mingyang's intentional or unintentional protection, the 2 women killed many mutant mosquitoes without any danger. Mu Ningxue gradually became familiar with the horizontal sword in her hand. In addition, she had practiced some fighting skills before, and the short battle made her grow rapidly. After a while, the master bedroom was already full of mutant mosquito corpses. Wang Mingyang had to use his hands and feet to throw some of the corpses out of the window, gradually moving the battlefield to the window. Bang, bang, bang. Please, open the door and let us hide. Open the door quickly. There are too many monsters. Our room is full of monsters. Open the door quickly. If you don't open the door, I will crash into it, and then we will all die together. Ah! Get out! Don't bite me! Just as the 3 of them were constantly killing mutant mosquitoes, there was a fierce banging sound on the living room door, and a series of rapid cries came from outside the door. Chapter 29, Fighting with Foreigners. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fierce banging on the door continued, reaching the master bedroom and attracting more mutated mosquitoes. What should I do? Do you want to open the door? Mu Ningxue looked back at the door of the living room, a flash of unbearability flashed in her eyes, and spoke in a low voice. Su Yu remained silent, pursed his red lips tightly and waved his sword, slashing at the mutated mosquitoes that kept coming. Laugh. Wang Mingyang sneered and continued to kill the mosquitoes without looking back, with a hint of ridicule in his indifferent expression. You can open the door and I won't stop you, but then, life or death will depend on you. This group of people want to drag us to death before they even come in, and you still want to save them. What's on your mind? The Bible. Wang Mingyang's merciless ridicule made Mu Ningxue's face stiffen and become extremely ugly. Su Yu also looked a little embarrassed. After all, she had thought about rescuing others before, but Wang Mingyang quickly taught her how to choose in this situation. Not surprisingly, Mu Ningxue stopped talking. Born as a proud daughter of heaven, Mu Ningxue has been living in an ivory tower, protected by her father's meticulous love, but she is not entirely an innocent and good girl. After experiencing Zhao Ding's betrayal and being mocked so bluntly by Wang Mingyang, the unbearable feeling in my heart immediately disappeared, but the tree was about to calm down but the wind didn't stop. The door was suddenly knocked open by a huge force, and a group of people rushed in. A man quickly closed the door, regardless of the fact that there were two people outside who hadn't come in. Vicious curses could be faintly heard through the solid wooden door, and then several miserable howls were heard. The only sound left outside was the sound of mosquitoes hitting the wooden door. A group of people hurriedly moved various furniture in the living room and quickly blocked the door. They didn't sit down on the ground until they confirmed that the mosquitoes outside could not get in. Wang Mingyang looked back at the living room and frowned slightly. It was a bit baffling that these people had to come to his place without going to so many rooms, but now is not the time to pursue the case. There are more and more mutated mosquitoes, and these mosquitoes must be dealt with first. Su Yu, use all your strength to cover the entire window with flames. Don't leave even a drop. Wang Mingyang. No, stay. Su Yu stuck out his tongue and stretched out his palm towards the window. The energy in his body surged, and a dark red flame surged forward like a tide. Dark flames covered the entire window and extended outwards. The mutated mosquitoes that crazily poured into the house were attacked by the sudden flames. Together with the mutated mosquitoes that had not yet broken in, they turned into balls of fire that kept rising from the air. Come down. A large number of mutated mosquitoes were burned to death by the dark flames, clearing a large space. In just a few seconds, all the energy in Su Yu's body was exhausted and his face turned pale. Large drops of sweat wetted his hair, and his body felt a little shaky and weak. Wang Mingyang seized this rare opportunity and stepped on the edge of the floor-to-ceiling window. He waved his hand at the floor-to-ceiling windows downstairs, and heard a crunching sound. The metal frames of several floor-to-ceiling windows downstairs also twisted and deformed away from the wall. With the sound of broken glass, the huge metal frame quickly flew upwards, stretched and deformed in mid-air, and then flew in front of Wang Mingyang. More than 10 floor-to-ceiling windows were continuously controlled from top to bottom, left and right, and their frames were used to form a metal iron plate. Wang Mingyang controlled the iron plate and quickly covered the floor-to-ceiling window of the master bedroom. Under the control of the metal control ability, this iron plate tightly covered the floor-to-ceiling windows. The mutant mosquitoes that quickly gathered around made the iron plate sizzle, but they were still unable to break through. Wang Mingyang then turned and walked towards the living room. The doors of the other two secondary bedrooms were closed tightly. It seemed that because there was no one inside, the mutated mosquitoes did not break through the windows of these two bedrooms. Walking into the living room, Wang Mingyang saw several men and women sitting behind the door. There were 6 people in total, 4 men and 2 women, including 2 male Westerners. Among them, a tall man with blonde hair and blue eyes seemed to be the leader. The moment they saw Wang Mingyang coming, the other people all looked at the Westerner. The blonde man quickly stood up and took a few steps towards Wang Mingyang. Fake. Why don't you open the door? Don't you know it will kill us? The blonde man yelled in awkward Chinese with a look of chicken shit on his face. Wang Mingyang's face turned cold. He was unwilling to open the door in the first place, but now that he was forced in, this foreigner dared to challenge him. Those who are not of my race must have different minds. The ink shadow in his hand suddenly slashed down diagonally. The blonde man caught the light of the knife from the corner of his eye, his body trembled, and it turned into an afterimage and disappeared in place. The ink shadow went straight across the blonde man's body, but Wang Mingyang didn't feel anything. There was a look of surprise in his eyes, and he whispered in surprise. Afterimage? A blonde male figure appeared at the door, leaning against the wall, panting slightly and cursing angrily. Fake. You actually want to kill me? Another brown-haired Westerner on the side suddenly raised his hand. A recurved bow appeared suddenly, and shot an arrow at Wang Mingyang. At such a short distance, the sharp arrow had already reached Wang Mingyang's eyes the moment it was shot. The next moment, the arrow suddenly paused in the air, only 1 centimeter away from Wang Mingyang's eyes. The brown-haired man opened his mouth wide, and froze in place with a mocking smile. His eyes showed disbelief, and the right hand that fired the arrow still kept the loose string. Wang Mingyang snorted coldly, and the arrow quickly turned around, and the next second it cut through the air and shot towards the brown-haired man's forehead. Tom, be careful. The blonde man flashed and appeared in front of the brown-haired man in an instant. This blonde man seemed to have the ability to move quickly. At the critical moment, he grabbed the arrow with one hand. Humph! Wang Mingyang snorted coldly. waved his hand, and 9 steel needles floated around him, all shooting towards the 2 Westerners. "Be careful, he can control metal," the blonde man roared in a low voice in the federal language, and his figure flashed, grabbing a solid wooden chair and smashing it towards Wang Mingyang. Tom rolled on the ground, dodged 2 steel needles, pulled out an arrow and quickly broke the arrowhead, bent the bow and shot another arrow at Wang Mingyang. Wang Mingyang twisted his body, and the ink shadow in his hand drew an arc, splitting the chair thrown by the blonde man in half. At the same time, a silver bead flew up and turned into a small shield to block the arrow shot by Tom. Frowning slightly, the blonde man was extremely fast, but because he found that Wang Mingyang could control metal, he did not have any metal weapons in his hands, so his lethality was limited. On the other hand, Tom, who was shooting arrows, reacted quickly to break the metal arrowheads of the arrows, and the arrows with pure wooden shafts were still very lethal. Several silver beads flew out of Wang Mingyang's pocket, and at the same time, he quickly controlled the silver beads to stretch and deform. With a slight flick of his right-hand fingers, a total of more than 10 steel needles shot towards Tom. Seeing this, the blonde man immediately dodged and shook off the 3 steel needles that had been following him. His figure appeared in front of Tom, and he waved the wooden stick that he had grabbed in his hand at some point, knocking away the steel needles that shot towards Tom. Seeing that Wang Mingyang's steel needles returned in vain, the blonde man showed a trace of mockery on his face, but Tom behind him groaned twice, and the recurved bow in his hand fell to the ground, making a few light sounds. Warm reminder: if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 30 Swift Kill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The blonde man trembled and turned around suddenly, only to find Tom covering his chest with an arrow piercing through his chest. "Tom," the figure flashed, and the blonde man immediately dragged the shaky Tom and hid behind a sofa. Wang Mingyang sneered. Knowing that he had the ability to control metal, he dared to throw arrows on the ground. Isn't this like picking up feces in the toilet with a lantern? At this moment, he didn't care who these people were. With a wave of his hand, more than a dozen steel needles crossed the arc and stabbed at the 2 Westerners behind the sofa. "Stop it. They are 2 important foreign guests." A fat man in a suit with a big back hair and a big belly suddenly shouted. In fact, from the time the blonde man stood up and spoke to the time the brown-haired man Tom was pierced by his own arrow, it took only 10 seconds, and the others didn't react at all to what happened. When he found that the brown-haired man Tom was seriously injured and was taken to the sofa by the blonde man to hide, the man in the suit shouted anxiously. The steel needles that shot out suddenly stopped, and then continued to kill the target. Wang Mingyang glanced at the big slicked-back man and said coldly, "What a bullshit foreign guest, what does it have to do with me?" The blonde man screamed, and had no choice but to take Tom and quickly dodge the steel needles. "Stop it. They are the senior executives of West Pharmaceutical Company of the federal state, and important foreign guests of the city government's key projects. How can you hurt them? You are committing a crime. Yes, yes. You will cause international disputes." The big slicked-back man immediately shouted angrily, and the other man with glasses also reacted and quickly put a big hat on Wang Mingyang. "Noisy," Wang Mingyang shouted coldly, and the 2 steel needles broke away from the formation and shot directly at the big slicked-back man and the glasses man. The 2 men's shouts of anger stopped abruptly, and the steel needles more than 10 centimeters long were deeply nailed into their foreheads, one on the left and one on the right. The blonde man took Tom to dodge, and his speed was affected. After a while, Tom groaned and was stabbed by another steel needle. Reaching out to push the blonde man away, Tom suddenly blocked in front of the blonde man, and more than 10 steel needles pierced into his body. "Jerry! Kill him!" Tom roared, his muscles tightened, and he trapped more than 10 steel needles tightly in his body. Wang Mingyang frowned slightly, and the metal control was activated again, and the steel needles exploded in Tom's body in an instant. The blonde man Jerry roared, flashed from behind Tom, leaving a trail of afterimages behind him, raised the wooden stick in his hand, and appeared directly beside Wang Mingyang in the next second. At the moment when the arrow was about to be shot, Wang Mingyang hummed lightly, flicked his fingers secretly, and a black line suddenly appeared beside him. In the blink of an eye, this black line, less than half a meter long, crossed Jerry's fallen stick, then vertically crossed his head and disappeared in the air. Jerry's stick suddenly fell, and with inertia, it hit Wang Mingyang's shoulder heavily, but was blocked by a thin layer of metal. The blonde Jerry's figure could no longer move. With a trace of anger and triumphant joy on his face, a blood line slowly appeared from the middle of his head, and the aura in his blue eyes disappeared, and the whole person froze in place. Jerry? Tom, who fell to the ground, looked at Jerry, who was standing still, with a look of horror, until Wang Mingyang slapped Jerry's head and pushed him to the ground. Tom realized that Jerry's head was bleeding and he was dead. With a puff, Tom could no longer suppress the blood gushing from his throat, spewing out a mouthful of blood. His eyes widened. Tom followed Jerry in despair and fell to the ground with his eyes wide open. The two women in revealing clothes were silent, hiding in the corner and shivering, not daring to make a sound. A smell of urine came from under the two shivering women, which made Wang Mingyang look disgusted. He walked to the sofa, left behind and sat down, and Wang Mingyang spoke lightly. "Tell me. What's the matter with these two dead foreigners?" The two women covered their mouths, looking at each other, and no one dared to speak first, for fear that they would be stabbed to death by the steel needle as soon as they spoke. "You say it." Wang Mingyang pointed impatiently at one of the big wave women. Yes, yes." The big wave shrank her neck, put down her hands and nodded repeatedly. "Stop talking nonsense, and speak quickly." "Ah. Okay, I'll tell you." Big Wave was frightened and said hurriedly, "Jerry and Tom are our customers. I heard from them. They are senior executives of a multinational pharmaceutical group in the Federation. They came to Chunqing this time, to acquire Kanghui Chinese medicine factory in Xiqing district, but the negotiations this morning did not go smoothly. The person in charge of Kanghui directly and sternly rejected the acquisition." "Then why are these two foreigners here with you?" The fat man and the man with glasses are the officers of the municipal government's investment promotion department. This acquisition is a key project of the municipal government, so they were assigned to cooperate with the two foreign guests throughout the process." "What does this have to do with you? Are you their colleagues?" Wang Mingyang pointed at the two men whose heads were pierced by steel needles. Big Wave and another short-haired woman looked at each other and shook their heads. Seeing Wang Mingyang's puzzled expression, Big Wave said a little embarrassedly, "The fat man asked me to help find a few girls to serve the two foreigners. Including me, there are a total of 4. 2 died when the zombies broke out. Oh. They teamed up to cross mountains and explore secrets in broad daylight, and they were not afraid of being exhausted. They really know how to have fun." Wang Mingyang suddenly realized that it was a call girl, and he was speechless. Suyu and Ningxue, who were standing by the door of the master bedroom, were a little confused at first, and then rolled their eyes. "This Wang Mingyang is full of dirty talk." We have no choice." Fatty said that the instructions from above must meet all the requirements of these two people, otherwise we are not willing to do business with foreigners. Dabbling nodded repeatedly, as if she was afraid that the big boy in front of her would blame her. Foreigners' business is the most difficult to do. If she didn't deal with fat guys frequently and it was hard to offend them, she wouldn't want to take this job at all. After one trip, she couldn't walk and had to lie down for at least 3 days, not to mention the delay in making money. The dead fat guy didn't pay. Using the power in his hands, he mainly played a freeloader. "Forget it, they're dead anyway. Why don't you run to other floors, but knock on my door?" Wang Mingyang waved his hand, not caring at all. In the afternoon, this Jerry seemed to have awakened some special ability, and that Tom's strength also increased. "These two people have been waiting for rescue, so we have been squatting in the house and didn't go out. Later, I saw you and the other girl coming over, killing the zombies so cleanly, so, when those mosquitoes attacked us just now, Jerry and Tom immediately said they would come to join you." Dabalang wiped his sweat while telling the story. "So that's it, who said he wanted to drag me to death with him?" Wang Mingyang looked at the two with cold eyes. "Oh. That was the person who rushed out of another room, who was locked outside the door by Jerry, and seemed to be killed by those mutant mosquitoes. Dabalang's delicate body trembled, and he quickly recalled and said quickly, understanding all the causes and consequences. Wang Mingyang also grinned. However, he had no psychological pressure to kill the two foreigners, the fat man, and the man with glasses. No matter how awesome your previous identity was, it would be meaningless after the end of the world. The two women were trembling, and it was obvious. It was impossible for them to come up with this idea. You stay here honestly and don't make any other moves, otherwise I don't mind killing a few more people. Wang Mingyang's tone was calm, but the faint murderous intent was unquestionable. They were just two workers, and Wang Mingyang was too lazy to kill them. Yes, yes. We will stay here and not go anywhere. Understand, we will never move. The two women nodded in agreement. Their attitudes were as sincere as they could be, and their expressions were as humble as they could be.